Welcome to Paths of Operators and Networks. Many operators have path-based parameters in TouchDesigner, and this allows us to pull data from operators located anywhere inside of our project file. Understanding paths is a core skill in TouchDesigner, so it's important for us to take the time to look at how paths work. Let's make a few simple examples to better understand paths. We can begin by using the Tab key to open up the Upgrade dialog and adding a container component here into our network. Now, it's not uncommon for us to think about building an interface in one portion of our network and then selecting the output from our interface over to another portion of our network. And that's exactly the kind of idea we're going to explore. Let's head inside of container one. We can use the I key on the keyboard or the scroll wheel on our mouse. And next, let's go ahead and add a button here to our network and then also a slider. Now we can combine the outputs of both the slider and the button with a merge chop. So let's add a merge chop here into our network and go ahead and box select both the button and slider and connect those here to our merge. Next, we're going to use Alt-N to add a null here into our network. And now we can start to look at how we might select this information across our network. And I'm going to go ahead and add a select chop here in our network to take a look at what that means. Now, select operators exist across all family of operators. And so we're just going to first look at chops here. So I'm going to grab null1 and I'm going to drag it and drop it right here on the parameter called chops for my select chop. Now we'll see here that we end up with a link. We end up with a dotted line here that points over to our other operator. And this allows us to actually grab the contents of our null1 without actually needing to connect this with a wire. Now this is a relative based path. So here we are inside of container one instead of project one. And so when we look for another operator, we don't have to specify our entire path when we're using just a relative path. Let's go ahead and copy our select, move up to project one, and paste our select here. Now we'll see if we middle mouse click that we have an invalid path reference for null1. And that's because the null1 that we want is actually located inside of container one. So we can come over to our path here and add container one and slash. And actually we just need to make sure that we spell container right. And now what we've done is we have another relative path here that's specifying that we're looking inside of container one for the operator called null1. Now let's copy and paste our operator one more time and move it up here to the root of our network. Now we'll see that we again have an invalid path because we're relying on relative paths. It matters where our operator is inside of our network. We can also use the idea of absolute paths. Absolute paths start from the root portion of our network, and that's specified here by this first forward slash. And now it's all the way down. So we do slash project one, slash container one, slash null one. And now no matter where we kind of place this operator, this is going to be a valid path. Now there are excellent use cases for both absolute and for relative paths. And it's worth understanding how both of those work because we use them in different circumstances. Let's go ahead and take a look at another example. Let's add another container component here to our network. And now let's go ahead and head inside of our container and let's add a movie file in chop. With our movie file in chop here added to our network, let's go ahead and connect that to a fit chop. And we're going to use our fit chop to make sure that we fit the actual size of our parent's panel. So we're going to move to the common page. From our output resolution, let's select parent panel size. And now let's actually end with a null here. Now we're going to change the name of our null to be, say, null final, or you might use something like null underscore BG. And now let's go ahead and navigate up here. Now, instead of using the U key or the scroll wheel to move up to project one, let's actually go ahead and just click right here on project one inside of our panel. We can use this to actually jump to different portions of our network, and we'll notice that if we even click on the little slash, that we'll see a list of all of the subcomponents that we can navigate inside of. This is often really helpful when we want to jump around our networks quickly. If our operator is selected and we click here on our double chevrons, it will actually jump us inside of that operator as well. All right, so now let's take a look at how we might actually grab that null final top here in our container 2. Let's head over to the look page and we're going to use a different type of syntax. This time we're going to use a dot slash and then null underscore final. The specification dot slash means that we're going to look inside of this operator. So this is a way of saying I want to look inside of this operator for null final. Let's look at one other way that we might use this same kind of syntax. Let's go ahead and add another container component here to our network. And this time, let's add a timer chop to our network as well. So now what I want to do is I want to actually navigate here inside of container 3, and I want to grab that timer chop. So I'm going to grab a select chop here. And this time, what I'm going to do here in my chops is I'm going to use dot dot slash. So 2 dots tells us that we're going to go up one directory to grab timer 1. Now, this is really handy because we can use the same idea of this dot and dot dot notation to do all sorts of relative path construction. Let's go ahead and add another base component here inside of our network. And before we do that, let's head back up to project 1. I'm going to use the H key to home us. And now I'm going to add a noise top here inside of our network. I'm going to make sure that it's non-monochrome, and I think I'm just going to turn the period for this up a little bit. There we go. Next, I'm going to head inside of container 3 and inside of base 1, and I'm going to grab a select top. Now, what I want to do is I want to go up 1, up 2, so dot dot slash, noise 1. This lets me move up 2 kind of layers in our directory structure or in our project structure to go all the way up to project 1 to find noise 1. Now, one thing that's worth noting is anytime we see our little arrow here, and I'm going to go ahead and use parameters to pop open our parameters window here. Anytime we see our little jump to op button, this will allow us to actually open up a floating network that allows us to see exactly the operator that we're referencing. This can be extremely helpful and allows us to navigate quickly. And we actually can find that the same idea is going to be present here. So let's head inside of container 3. I'm going to use the H key. I'm going to go ahead and right click, and I'm going to select Open Floating Network. This can be really useful when you want to be in 2 locations at once inside of TouchDesigner, or especially if you're working across multiple monitors. This is just a few ideas of the ways that you can begin to use paths here in TouchDesigner. Paths are one of the most important components that we can actually have access to, and they allow us to do all sorts of really interesting types of operations.